Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Savor life with Diana. That's what it's all about. And we're urging everyone to do the same. She's talking about the life coaching she does here for business women to help you achieve more success with less stress, avoid that burnout, and don't ever step back from reaching those dreams and goals. Start now. Go to savorlifewithdiana.com. And we're excited to have her back here live today on the show. How are you?
Hey Jill, I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Excited to have you back today. And I know we're going to be discussing a little bit about willpower and why that isn't enough to beat stress eating. And we'll talk about some of the things that actually do work. So, first and foremost, Diana, please say hello and introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yes. Hi, my name is Diana. I am a coach for peak performers who want to not just work harder, but work smarter so that they can avoid burnout, manage their stress, and achieve sustainable success that doesn't cost them their health or happiness.
Yeah, And by the way, tell us where you're located and you work with people virtually all over, though.
Yes, I do. I speak and I coach virtually all over. And I'm based in Honolulu, Hawaii. So while it's getting cold on the rest of the mainland US right now, it's still like a nice 78 degrees here. I was enjoying the breeze with my daughter this morning.
Miss Olive, right? That's her name, Olive?
Yes, yes, that's right.
And
Yeah.
how old is she again?
Oh, she's almost a year and a half, and she's so much fun, but there are times where I just like, with a toddler, it's like, oh my God, this is so joyful.
Yeah, I get it. We've been there. A lot of us can relate. And then things change. And then you're going to say, I miss those days. And you're going to be like, what? Yeah. You got to write everything down, take plenty of pictures and videos, which I'm sure you're doing. And the stress of raising a child, that's a whole nother show. We could do that. But today we're going to talk about stress eating, right? What exactly is stress eating, by the way? Let's get started there.
Sure. Stress eating is a response that we have. Sometimes people think of it as like cravings right around the time that they're going through something really stressful for them. And it's actually really more than that, right? It's our body's way of seeking comfort in an uncomfortable situation. So we eat, or some people actually
Mhm.
like don't eat. So it's really interesting, like the way that stress eating affects people. Some people stop eating altogether, and some people eat like even more than normal. And a lot of people think that it's actually the stress that's a problem, but it's not. So that's where we're going today. We're going to talk about like what's actually the problem, what's causing the stress eating, so we can stop that. Because as long as we're addressing the symptom, we're not getting to the root cause. And I don't want us to just like go off and think that we need another diet, that keto is going to solve our problems or any of those things. We actually need to go deeper beyond simply changing our diet, and start looking at other factors that are causing us to stress eat in the first place.
Yep, and dive into it and figure this all out. You say your stress response is the real problem, not your external stressors.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we think that stress is caused by the stress in our life, right? It's our job, it's our family, it's our busy schedule. But that's not true. But I understand that mindset as well, right? Like for a long time, I blamed my stressful job for my stress eating. I thought it was being in those high stress environments like Wall Street or Michelin starred kitchens. And I thought that that constant pressure was why I'd be reaching for a snack or, whatever that was, right? And I would try, when I'd noticed myself gaining weight, I'd try to like willpower myself to diet. But the second that the stress got out of control, so did my eating, right? And then I would end up beating myself up saying, oh, like, I don't have enough willpower. Like, so I would make it mean something about myself. Um, but what I've realized over time is, hey, like I'm a pretty resilient person. I do have a lot of willpower.
Darn
There's
right.
something else going on here that I'm not considering. And when I started to look and realize that it wasn't just the job causing the stress, but it was how I was handling it. Because there were other people, right, who were also going through the same job stress, who weren't stress eating like I was. So that means that there's got to be a way outside of stress eating to manage this, right? So when I started working on my stress response, that was when I started to stop turning to food for relief. And actually, overall, my stress response changed. So, this is the same thing that I see a lot of times with my clients. They think that they blame their demanding jobs for why they're overeating or why they're not eating. Again, like I said, it works both ways. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and what we were able to do together, we used a couple different techniques to actually help her manage her stress response so that she wasn't craving sweets in the middle of the night anymore. She was craving calm. And that way she wasn't using food as a crutch for when she felt like she couldn't handle everything that was on her plate. She was able to like reclaim that sense of control, not just in her work, but also with
Yeah.
food.
Oh, Diana?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we froze there for a second. All right. Well, let's also elaborate on, this stress eating. You say it's not a, well, discipline problem either. So what is it then?
No, what it is it's our brain. So stress eating isn't caused by these
Hmm.
external stressors. It's caused by our brain's survival response to stress. So what we want to do instead of blaming ourselves, right, for for stress eating, what we want to do is actually rewire our stress response so that we stop relying on food for comfort. And like the thing about stress eating is that that is some people's means of like looking out for comfort, but other people's means of looking out for comfort is alcohol or shopping. Like there are all sorts of different ways um, that people respond to stress and different things that they do to relieve the stress. And what they're really craving in that moment is like a sense of control, a sense of calm, right? And for some people, based on their life experience, maybe it was food that brought that to them. Maybe it was alcohol. Maybe it was like some other form of drug. Maybe it was shopping. I even have friends and clients who like, their stress response when they feel that way is to like go book a trip, right? So they have like, they're just like avoiding
Yeah.
the stress altogether by like literally running away from it, flying away from it. So it's really not about like waiting for life to calm down because stress is a part of life, right? So when we are able instead to look at our response, right? What is going on in our brain that's actually causing us to behave this way? That's where we can begin to actually make meaningful change, where we can actually take control instead of just running on autopilot.
Interesting. Why are we always on autopilot?
Because it's efficient. So
Hmm.
our
Like
brain,
our
right?
brain
Like,
trains ourselves, right? To be, yeah.
yeah, but it's like just think about it. Your brain has it requires a lot of energy to run, and anything that it can do to be more efficient, to use less energy, it's going to do. So there are all sorts of ways that our brain runs programs or patterns in the background because it's more efficient for it to do what it's always done versus for it to override that pattern and to create something else. So like we blame it on ourselves and willpower, but let's talk about willpower for a second. When does willpower tend to fail? It's when we're stressed out, right? Like
Hmm.
it's like you were all so good, quote unquote, with your diet or with, your budget, not overspending or whatever that looks like for everybody. Um, and then all of a sudden something stressful comes around and it's like everything gets thrown out the window. So it's not the habit, it's not
Yeah.
the behavior, it's the trigger. And it's the allowance, the way that we allow ourselves to get triggered by that instead of having a way to interrupt that pattern and create something else. Um, so when we're thinking that it's willpower, right? Like we're selling ourselves short because it's not a discipline issue. Stress eating is not a discipline issue. It's our body's cry for comfort, right? And so
Yeah.
when we're able to feed our body's craving for calm, the habit stops.
Yeah. Well, we want that habit to stop. We want to get over this, but a lot of us do gain weight and do this stress eating. And that's what we're talking about today. And I'm hoping that, You all will learn a lot from Dan. I know you will, because there's a lot more that goes behind what's happening with stress eating. And you mentioned it's also affecting more than just draining your body, right, from all the nutrients we need. It's really affecting us on the mental level and taking away from our energy.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure you've worked with plenty of people who do this. There's got to be some guidance and tips. How do you stop? I mean, you got to recognize it first, right?
Yeah. To stop is like you said, it's first recognizing it, right? So now that we've talked about this pattern and we've talked about that it's not simply willpower, right? Or um it's not simply something that just has to happen. Now that we understand that our brain is involved in this, next time you're reaching for a snack, or next time you swear that you're not hungry when you're stressed, or next time you're making that impulse shopping decision, or again, whatever that looks like for you, just check into how you're feeling.
Yeah.
The first step is to have that awareness. Like, am I eating this? Am I consuming this because am I making this choice
Is
because I'm stressed out, or am I making
more.
it because I really want this? Like, um is this me seeking comfort in some way, or
Hmm.
am I like, is this something that like my body actually needs? This is something I actually need, right? Like, so when we stop that impulse, right? When we demonstrate control over the impulse, and like how we do that is not with willpower, but with
No.
understanding and compassion, right? Like, the more that we judge ourselves for the pattern of stress eating or stress buying or whatever it is that we do, the more that we're not able to bring ourselves the compassion that we need to change the behavior. We need to actually do something different, right? Because we've been beating ourselves up for stress eating, for doing this bad habit for how long? And that hasn't worked. So
Mm,
why not try something different? Because obviously beating ourselves up, thinking that we're weak, thinking that like, it's our that we just need another diet, that we just need another budget, that we just need like, to take action in a different way, like that hasn't helped us. It
yeah.
hasn't actually fixed the problem. So I think that when we go back to, what's like causing this trigger? Like, oh, I'm noticing um, I want to reach for a snack. I'm noticing that I want to reach for my credit card and buy something. I'm noticing I want to like book a trip. Like, like what's really going on inside me? Like
Yeah.
what am I
Well,
feeling? What am I running away from?
isn't there that this acronym, it's HALT, right? Are you really hungry? Are you angry? HAL is lonely. T is tired.
Yeah.
Right? We should stop and come to a halt and think what's really going on here. You got to think before you act, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And like, because that's where we begin to really look at the habit and think about like, is this, one of the things James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits is like, we all have habits, right?
Hmm.
And rather than like blaming the habit, or like, thinking that like the mechanism needs to change, let's look at like what it is that like is truly driving the mechanism, right? And is this habit that I have, is this driving me in the direction that I want to go? So when we can notice ourselves reaching for the snack, or reaching for a second slice of pizza or whatever that is, instead of just going right into it, if we can stop and say like, is this
Yeah.
behavior serving the person that I want to be?
Perfect.
Is this like who I really want to be? And the version of me who is healthier, the version of me that is you know, isn't like stress eating, is this the behavior that that version of me would be doing? And like doing it again from this place of not judgment and not shame, because again, those are more emotions that are just going to lead to um, like falling back into the addictive pattern. Like, so if you think about addiction, right? Because I talk a lot, I have an upcoming chronic stress masterclass where we're really going to talk about like stress as an addiction. Um, Addictive patterns, right? There's like a thrill of like indulging in the addictive pattern, whatever it is. And then after we have the thrill, there can be this like almost like if you think about it as an addiction, like the hangover, right? Like the bad feelings that come after it, like, oh, I wish I didn't do that, right? Like the beating ourselves up, like, oh, I should never do that again, right? And then there becomes this like resolve, like, okay, I'm never gonna do that again, right? Or in the case of the diet, or the stress eating, it's like I'm gonna put myself on this like restrictive diet and I'm never gonna do this, right? And then we continue along that path until we have a relapse,
Yeah.
typically caused by stress. Right. So we have this like stress or this thing that feels out of control in our lives. And so in an
Mm-hmm.
attempt to comfort ourselves, to take back control, we go back to whatever our addiction is. We go back to whether that's food, whether that's alcohol, whether like for some people it's even sex, like there's all different forms of addiction, gambling, like, and some of the addictions, right, like are illegal, but some are totally legal and like all around us all the time. So what we need to recognize is like, okay, when I'm under stress, where is it I go and reach for comfort?
So
And
true.
when you reach for that again, consider like, am I really looking for comfort in this moment, or am I really needing this thing that I'm going after? And
Mm-hmm.
that's part of it. But again, because these are patterns that are deeply embedded into our subconscious, like that's one of the things we're going to talk about in the master class, which you
Yeah.
can sign up on my website, savorlifewithdiana.com.
Perfect.
Um, that allows for you to really look at and think like, like what is going on and how do I begin to actually reprogram my subconscious mind so that I stop doing this? Because it is possible to reprogram our mind. And what I love with the work that I do with the clients that I work with is they may be stuck in this pattern for years.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've literally worked with women in their 50s or 60s or 70s who've had these patterns of stress eating like pretty much their whole lives. And they can experience and a shift in behavior so they can like feel the difference, like where they're able to like find
Yeah.
that calm truly craving. And that leads to a shift in behavior that literally they can like start to feel in minutes, where like somebody could be, I've had clients who they report to me like losing weight without even trying, or that all of a sudden they just don't crave the alcohol anymore, or there are like all sorts of different ways that this works. And what it really is doing is it's addressing the calm that our body is truly craving.
Yeah.
And instead of when we have a lot on our plate, thinking that we should just pile more onto our literal food plate, like it's about helping us to actually to address those issues in a way that's actually sustainable and that fulfills our longer term goals, so that we're not just going after that short term like fix, but
Yeah.
really getting the long term calm and peace we're looking for.
Beautiful. And that's what it's all about. Let's just remind everyone again, Savor Life with Diana. She's a peak performance coach. She's helping so many. She's got retreats. She has a lot happening as an international speaker. And she's also an author. What's the title of the book?
Yeah, it's called
Manifest.
Manifest Your Dreams Journal.
Perfect. Exactly. And that'll help someone well on their way. And is there the journal for the overeating, the stress eating as well?
There's not a journal, but there is like a healing technique that again we're going to talk about in the master class. And so even if you can't make it live, there's a recording. So click that button. It's right at the top of my website. It's called Stress Masterclass. Just go and check it out. Let's get to the bottom of the stress problem so that you're not blaming everything outside of you for what's going on. And you start to take control of what's going inside you. Because the truth is, we can't control the stress, whether it's the election stress or it's, like whatever is going on in the world. Like I have one client, she's talking about like, oh, she has wedding stress, right? Another client talks about like, the stress that she's having with her family because, her mom is in
Yeah.
hospice or whatever. It's like, no matter what, life is going to have stressors for us. So rather than like succumb to a craving every single time that we're stressed out, let's start feeding our body the calm that we really are looking for.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Sounds good to me. And by the way, Diana, I just want to also point out you can reach out to her there right on the website. And you also you're still doing your podcast?
Um,
Was it about body positivity or?
I have not recorded one of those with my
Okay,
co-host and
okay.
quite some
Just
time.
asking.
But you
Well,
can find it on Spotify and all the podcast platforms.
all right. Well, what else do you want to share with our listeners about this overeating and stress eating and how you can help them make it stop?
What I want to share most is that it's possible. And that like again, even if you've been in this pattern for years, like my clients when they work with me, sometimes they're like, "Oh yeah," like they don't even sometimes mention the pattern because it's just been around for so many decades. They don't think that we can handle it in the months that we work together. And literally, they'll see they'll see this shift in themselves happen in months where like things that had weighed them down and that had felt like they couldn't do it um, absolutely become possible. And so
Yeah.
I just encourage you to think like it doesn't just because you've been here or struggling with this for decades doesn't mean it's going to take decades to eradicate this. What
Mm,
it really says is your body has been craving calm. It's been craving peace. It's been craving something else for a long time. And what you keep feeding it isn't actually satisfying it. So once you're
mm,
able to feed your body that satisfaction that it's truly looking for, the peace, um, the calm that it's really seeking, because again, like when you're under chronic stress, there's nothing your body wants more than to get out of that, right? And so what we're doing when we're stress eating is we're trying to soothe some part of us, but we're not really soothing the part of us that like is gonna cause us to like, like when you have a craving satisfied and you're like,
and I get a
okay,
stomach ache. My craving is potato chips. And then I eat them and then I have a bad stomach ache. True.
yeah, yeah. But like, um, when you're like, you're when you're craving not a food, but like something in your life, and then you receive it, like like you're pursuing something, and then you get it, and then you just have this like feeling of like satisfaction, like okay, I've got that thing. That's what you're really craving. You're not
Yeah.
craving the potato chips. You're not craving the French fries or the pizza or any of those things. You're craving that like that comfort. And for whatever reason, for a lot of times when it's a specific food, there can often be like a childhood memory that's attached to it. So it's like somebody that, like you remember having potato chips with as a kid, or like maybe it's a specific brand or something like that. Like
Yeah.
for everybody, it's different. But what you'll notice is that it's like it is again, it's going back to like it's almost like we'll talk about the potato chips since you brought it up, right?
Oh, now I'm
But
craving them. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Jill. Uh-huh.
so like with the potato chips, right? It's like you think that you're craving a potato chip, but probably in your mind there's an association with a potato chip of like a person or a memory, and like what you're really craving is that feeling that you had back then, right? And it's the same thing with an alcohol addiction, right? Like they often say that the way that somebody feels the first time that they have it, like they just require more and more alcohol every single time to try to get that feeling, right? And it's the same with the food. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you just crave more and more of it, but it doesn't actually like and it takes more and more in order to feel the way that you wanted to feel. But if instead you could find a way to give yourself that feeling, the calm, the comfort, the security without the potato
Hey.
chip would like, would be something that you could enjoy in moderation the way that you really want to versus like ending up with a tummy ache the next day.
Yeah, very true. It's right. It does bring me back to childhood. It was so much fun. We would have a bag of chips in this cabinet full of chips, and my mom would always let us sneak in there and have them like all the time. We'd watch TV, so it's a good fun memory. Every time I have a chip,
Yeah.
I think of that. Always think
Yeah.
about my family. I do.
Yeah. So like it may be you're craving that family connection or like that security of like thinking of your mom again. It's
Yeah,
so we think it's about the food and it's like totally about something
maybe
else.
it's not. Yeah,
Yeah. And so when we like, it could be like um I don't know if any of your siblings or like your mom is still around, but like if instead of like you could have like maybe just one potato chip because also the potato chips are delicious, right? I mean, I'm a chef, so of course I love like
hmm
good. But like it could be like, you could have a conversation with a family member or with somebody that you love at the same time that you're enjoying a couple chips as opposed to like when you just
And do
end
the whole
up
bag. I know.
bag, right? And it's like, and those are the sort of things that like all of us can do, right? Like
Yeah.
for me, it's not potato chips. For me, it's like French fries, right? Like and I think about
Hey, potato chips are French fries, different forms. So now you got me.
they
Yeah.
are,
Similar,
yeah.
very similar. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Diana, unfortunately, we're out of time. Let's remind everyone, all the ways we can reach out to you.
Yeah, so you can find me on social media, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook. It's at Savor Life with Diana, SAVOR Life with Diana. Or you can go on my website, savorlifewithdiana.com, and that's where you can sign up for my upcoming free masterclass. It's a 30-minute stress masterclass. We're going to talk about the root of the stress problem, similar to like what we've dove into here, because it's not just stress eating. There are so many different ways that stress affects our body and our health. And when we know about it, we can actually stop the pattern, and we don't have to keep addressing just the symptoms and end up stuck in that cycle of feeling sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Thank you so much. We will reach out and tired of being sick and tired. A lot of us are. Let's change that. Thank you, Diana. We appreciate your time here as always. And we'll chat again next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill.
All right. Have a good day. Send my regards to Olive. Have fun. Bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.